The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Gary Bettman is retiring. It's not going to happen immediately, but it is a thing the NHL is planning for, because The Athletic just broke a story about how Craig Leipold spilled the beans on Gary Bettman's retirement. So let's go through this whole thing and break it down, because this is huge breaking news. So Craig Leipold, the owner of the Minnesota Wild, was on the Sick podcast / the Eye Test with Pierre Maguire and Jimmy Murphy. And on that podcast, he, I think, maybe accidentally, but definitely kind of accidentally on purpose, because nothing at that high level is done by accident. So Craig Leipold revealed that at the Board of Governors meeting, before the Board of Governors all did their meeting, Gary Bettman met with the executive committee. And the executive committee, if you're not aware, consists of Craig Leipold of the Minnesota Wild, the owner there, Mark Chipman, the owner of the Winnipeg Jets, Jeremy Jacobs, the owner of the Boston Bruins, Murray Edwards, owner of the Calgary Flames, Ted Leonsis, owner of the Washington Capitals, Jeff Molson, owner of the Montreal Canadiens, Henry Samueli, owner of the Anaheim Ducks, Larry Tannenbaum, owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs, New Jersey Devils owner David Blitzer was recently added, and Jeff Vinik, owner of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So those representative owners from those organizations make up the executive committee. So you have 32 owners, and amongst those 32 owners, you have a special selection, the people I just named, who are like the actual people who are pulling all the strings behind the scenes, because they are, like I said, the executive committee. And they meet with the commissioner, and they kind of plan things, and they make all the real decisions. And then they go to the rest of the Board of Governors, and they tell them what's up and how it's actually going to work. Before all of the Board of Governors met, the 32 of them, Gary talked to that executive committee. And he revealed that we need to start thinking about when I'm not going to be here. We need to start thinking about me not being commissioner of the NHL anymore. And this is a huge deal, because Gary Bettman is not a man who seems like he's ever going to give up this post. And we'll get to his quotes where he says he wants to work forever. But he is 72 years old. He is about to enter his 33rd year as NHL commissioner. He was named commissioner on February 1st, 1993. So in 7 days, we'll have an anniversary of that moment when he was named commissioner. And he said, guys, I'm not going to live forever. What's the next plan when I leave this game? And Craig Leipold, I'll give you his quote from the podcast, revealed that they had this conversation with Gary. He said, listen, we're like $5-6 billion company. The entire league is. So we have a CEO who's going to be moving on, and any transition would cause us to be concerned. And so really all I was saying is that we have a commissioner now for 30 years, maybe a little more. And he has been outstanding. I mean, truly has been an incredible commissioner and has done great things. Now we're going to transition to somebody else. And that should make all of us a little concerned that we have to be certain we get the right person. It's a concern that I have. How are we going to get anybody as good as Gary? The answer is we're not. So who's going to be the second best person? And is that going to be good enough? And then he was asked directly, he's like, hey, have you begun the formal process of finding Gary Bettman's successor? And he said, I would say that we have. There's the admission from a speaker from the executive committee that they have begun a formal process to find Bettman's successor. The Athletic did great work on this, because it was revealed in that podcast with Pierre and Murphy. They do their due diligence, as a great news organization does, and they met with Gary Bettman. They met with him in Minnesota ahead of the Utah Hockey Club's game against the Minnesota Wild. Michael Russo, who wrote this story along with Chris Johnston of SDPN and The Athletic, they wrote this story together, and Michael Russo met with Gary Bettman and got some quotes about the retirement. Bettman told The Athletic on Thursday, I just wanted to put it on their radar. When you don't have the energy and the passion, you have to think about it. The good news is I have the energy and I have the passion. I love what I do. And actually, I enjoy doing what I'm doing probably more than I ever would enjoy retirement. I'm not wired to be retired. So Bettman he did admit that he wants it to be on the executive committee's plate. He wants it to be on their radar, and it is. They have begun a formal process, but he's not planning on retiring anytime soon. But if the formal process has began, this is only a few years away. That's speculation out of me, but I can't imagine Bettman sticks around for more than a few more years. And the timing of this announcement is perfect with the upcoming expiry of the NHL CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. Because to me, this news and that CBA puts a timeline on things. We can see a transition process for the commissioner and for the NHL. So the CBA negotiations with the Players Association are set to begin next month. The formal discussions haven't begun, but when asked about it previously in the fall, Gary Bettman said that negotiations will begin sometime in February, hopefully with the Players Association. The CBA expires in 2026. So we start the new CBA in the 26-27 season. The perfect transition process for Gary Bettman to the next commissioner is Gary fulfills the obligation to negotiate this CBA with the Players Association. They sign it. He doesn't lock them out. Hopefully, we don't get a strike on the other end. Everything is hunky-dory. Revenues are through the roof. Hopefully, we get a great negotiation and there's no work stoppage and we get a brand new CBA and we go on with the league, carrying on with no nonsense. So hopefully that happens. And the new CBA starting in 26-27 would then be the final year of Bettman where we get the transition to the next commissioner. So Gary stays on through this year and through the next year to negotiate the CBA. They sign it eventually. It kicks in for the 26-27 season. The 26-27 season, the first year of the new CBA, is Gary Bettman's last year. And then the new commissioner starts at the end of the 26-27 NHL calendar. So like at the draft and into the 27-28 season. And that would be a perfect time for a transition to a new commissioner. At that point, Gary Bettman would be about 35 years into this thing. He'd be 75 years old. He's probably good. He's probably good on running the league, and I think everybody else would be good with that as well. Now we get into the part where it's going to be very hard to predict, and I don't think we have any good answers on this right now, but Bill Daly, the deputy commissioner, is a person that has been talked about for some time to be the successor to Gary Bettman because he has been Gary Bettman's right-hand man for a long, long time. Bill Daly has always been right there with Gary Bettman in lockstep, doing everything that Gary Bettman wants. So I could definitely see the executive committee, knowing Bill Daly so well, giving him the keys to the castle to be the next commissioner of the NHL. But this process is a process that's just beginning. I can also see outside names coming into the fold as they go and do their research and find the right person for this job to take over for Gary. And I can see somebody not Bill Daly, but if I was putting odds on it, I think the favorite right now would be Bill Daly, which would mean more of the same that we're getting because he is a Gary Bettman disciple. Personally, I would like them to not go with Bill Daly because then we can get something fresh and new, hopefully. Maybe some other commissioners able to change a lot of the old guard that we're, as hockey fans, a lot of the time unhappy with. And Bill Daly, I feel like, would just be more of the same, but we want something different. So maybe an outside commissioner would be the way to go. But who knows about that side of things? It is fascinating that Gary Bettman is even mentioning the word retirement. That is huge news, and the executive committee is working the phones now to find his successor. So huge news tonight. That's it for me right now. Let me know what you think in the YouTube comments or wherever you interact with this show. I will be back very shortly. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be listening or watching right now, and I appreciate you for that. Hit like on this video or hit subscribe on the Jesse Blake Sports Report YouTube channel. Good night from Toronto.
And that is how it's done.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.